he's a warrior, and I do like him. He can really sting opponents with a real Hollywood pass, and I think sometimes you can see that eye-catching pass and the through ball, and you think, wow, this guy's amazing. If I'm picking that squad tomorrow, then in my view, Mainoo's in all day, every day, and twice on Sunday. He's terrific. I think if Man City win the title this season, then I think that Mark Gay would be my player of the year. I genuinely do. I think it's a bit of a gamble with Tuchel, because I think Tuchel's qualifying campaign has been outstanding. But Tuchel has a history of falling out with the hierarchy.
He does,
right throughout his clubs. So I think that is the worry.
Welcome to Make Football Great Again, the podcast that's not only your definitive 48-nation roadmap to the 2026 World Cup, but is also giving you the ultimate inside track on the race for a place in England's World Cup squad this summer. My name's Harry Brent, and I'm delighted to say that I'm once again joined by the one and only John Cross, Mirror's chief football writer, who's going to be bringing you the latest instalment of our England player ratings series as we count down towards the biggest party of the summer, the FIFA World Cup. John, pleasure to have you with us again, mate. How's it all going?
Yeah, good, thank you. Energised by a great week of football.
I think that's absolutely right. So much football in the last week, and most of it has been pretty entertaining. Speaking of, I'll start as I did last week, or last time we were with you. I just want to ask you about the live football that you've seen in recent days. Last Tuesday last week, you were at the London Stadium to watch West Ham's 1-1 draw with Man United. Benjamin Sesko scoring an incredibly well-taken equaliser to snatch a point for United, denying, perhaps cruelly, perhaps not, depending on your view, denying West Ham, crucial 3 points in their fight for survival. Lots of England players on show in that game, England players in action. Three of them for Man United who were regulars under Gareth Southgate: Kobbie, Mainoo, Harry Maguire, Luke Shaw. All have kind of, for whatever reason, for different reasons, have fallen out of the England picture a little bit. All three of those guys have had their fair share of problems at club level, but all seem now to be thriving under Michael Carrick. How did they get on against West Ham, and where does that leave them in contention for England places in the summer?
Yeah, I think, Harry, the one that's really interested me was Kobbie Mainoo, to be honest. I think that Kobbie Mainoo, and we've all seen the free Kobbie Mainoo t-shirts, haven't we? And basically, even his family getting involved at Old Trafford, trying to get him out there under Ruben Amorim. It feels like he's been just given this incredible new lease of life, incredible opportunity, and rightly so, by the way. What a talent! I do think with Kobbie Mainoo, I think his progression in 23-24, so in the build-up to the Euros, was so remarkable, his upward trajectory, that I wondered, have we almost overhyped this guy? Have we kind of got almost too carried away? But then the counter-argument to that is, well, he's actually really forced his way into the England setup. He's demanded it and commanded it with brilliant performances for United. He's then, started the tournament. Is he going to play? Is he going to see some minutes? Into being an absolute mainstay all the way into the final. I mean, it's remarkable. It's fabulous. But there was always this discussion about, wow, okay, normally he wouldn't get this chance so soon. And maybe Ruben Amorim wanted to sort of hold him back. But I just thought his treatment overall was poor of Kobbie Mainoo. But basically, it was too much. He's clearly a very, very talented kid who's such a young player, but also so mature in the way that he keeps the ball, protects the ball. And it's great to see him regain that confidence and a belief under Carrick, who's the archetypical kind of classy midfielder and someone that would really appreciate Mainoo. So there's no doubt about it in my mind that Mainoo is really... I mean, we've got lots of competition in those central midfield places. If I'm picking that squad tomorrow, then in my view, Mainoo's in all day, every day, and twice on Sunday. He's terrific in what he brings. He brings a calmness. I'm not saying he absolutely starts, but my word, for me, he's definitely in the squad.
Yeah, I was going to say, last time we were on, you were talking about Declan Rice and Elliot Anderson being the presumptive starters. Mainoo, obviously, at the Euros was a regular. Do you think he has the potential to break into that England first team, or is it a case of Anderson's got to slip up a little bit?
I think Anderson's got to slip up a bit. I just think sometimes it's about a dynamic and it's about an understanding and a partnership. And I think Rice has that with Anderson. I think there's always a lot of talk and noise about Adam Wharton. Yeah. And I think Adam Wharton is another one to take into consideration. I do think there's a big chance for Adam Wharton as well. But he's, for me, in my view, he's a different style of player. But Adam Wharton is kind of much more, a little bit more static and sort of placing the pass. And he can really sting opponents with a real Hollywood pass. And I think sometimes you can see that eye-catching pass and the through ball. Yeah. And you think, wow, this guy's amazing. Yeah. But does he cover the ground that is needed in a modern midfield? That's my question with him. And I think that's why I put Anderson ahead of him. I think the other big attribute for Anderson is that he almost does all the legwork, allowing Declan Rice to do what he does so well for Arsenal when he's at his best and be that number 8 who storms forward and basically really joins up and basically gets forward and attacks. Or, he's absolutely marauding midfielder. And it's that partnership that I like. I mean, I do think that Mainoo has almost unfairly been criticised or characterised, I should say, as a kind of holder, where I think he's much better in that kind of, kind of getting forward, bringing the ball forward.
Yeah, ball
and his
progressive.
Calmness on the ball, and he's always looking forward, and that's what I really like about him.
Just want to ask you about Harry Maguire. I mean, are we in the midst of the mother of all redemption arcs here? I mean, for so long he was sort of the butt of every joke. It's very, I think, quietly kind of put that reputation to bed a little bit. Still wasn't the player that he perhaps was in years gone by, but has shelved that reputation a little bit. And now under Carrick, getting regular football, looking like a hell of a player again. What do you make of his chances of not only going, but does he have a chance of getting into the first team, or am I getting ahead of myself?
I think you're getting ahead of yourself, really, which is great because honestly, we want the enthusiasm. But I do think that what Maguire offers is experience, is quality, and is such an aerial threat also in the opposing boxes.
Yes.
And so basically, if you are going to take Dan Burn because of that conversation, for me, I would be taking Harry Maguire over Dan Burn, if you like, because of what he brings. Now, the issue for Maguire is that basically, he's too slow, the turning circle. Well, come on. I mean, we could have that discussion about Dan Burn. I think the other thing is that Maguire, I think there's no doubt about it, England missed Maguire at Euro 2024. And I think even sort of kind of Gareth Southgate has acknowledged that really, because he's a big part of the previous regime. And I do think he's just because he's been in and out, suffered from injuries, but he's so wholehearted and he's so experienced in that basically his reading of the game and the ball and where it is in the danger areas is so important. And him in a 4, what he can offer, I think, has been a big thing in the Carrick revival. And I think he's a big personality, he's a big person and character. And I think, I genuinely think that he's got a chance of the squad. I think that for me, the central defensive axis is still Mark Gay. He came on, and basically when Mark Gay comes on against Salford, he changes the game, goes from a sort of slightly all nervous performance into a, okay, we'll see this out. And basically that's what Mark Gay has offered for Man City's season as a whole, by the way, which is great. And then in my view, it's Ezri Konsa. Yeah. Now, I think if John Stones is fit and can prove himself with minutes, I think John Stones is next in the conversation and might even, be the preferred starter. But I think Maguire is would have to accept that basically might be kind of next cab off the rank in those, in that sort of kind of setup, really. So I think that's what he's up against. But I think he's put himself back in the frame in the conversation for the squad, yeah. Whereas I think, being realistic, 2 months ago, no chance, absolutely no chance, was nowhere. Just because he wasn't getting the opportunities and almost the respect, I think, that basically from a Man United manager about what he can bring to the team. And I think he brings a lot to the party.
Let's move on to the West Ham side of things. Jared Bowen in action, has been very central to this kind of mini revival of sorts at West Ham lately. How did he fare against?
Yeah, good. I thought it was really interesting actually because Bowen is much more, and Bowen is was direct competition against Luke Shaw, and Luke Shaw obviously is another one. If you're going to play a conventional back four, then Luke Shaw's conversation in the left back. I don't know. It feels like it's a long way back for sure. Let's see how that goes, really. He's got to prove his fitness. But I like that sort of kind of battle because obviously so often Bowen is drifting to the right. And I personally think Saka is in pole position, one of the first names on the team sheet to start.
Yeah.
And then I think next up it's Bowen v Madueke. And I think it's very much going to be one or the other, in my view, because both are much better on the right. That's their home. That's where they're comfortable. That's where they cut in. And I think that basically Bowen, for me, has been absolutely crucial in the West Ham revival. I loved his part in the goal. He holds up kind of off the defender. He sort of kind of sprays it wide, goes and joins up, provides the cross. He's a warrior, and I do like him. I think you've got that against Madueke, who's very, very good at basic breaking down tight defences, and so kind of could give you an extra edge from the bench. I think, being realistic, neither would be starters. So I think you're playing as that squad member. So I think that actually being part of the group has got to be another aspect in kind of Tuchel's thinking. They're both strong characters. And they're both kind of players that, you think, okay, they would fit into the group. And I think Bowen being West Ham captain, he said, been absolutely heartbroken in the past about kind of, missing out on the squad. So I think, again, he would bring big personality and character to the squad.
Well, I'll just get your official John Cross rubber-stamped player ratings for those guys who were in action. So, just for context, last week you gave Harry Maguire and Luke Shaw 5 out of 10 of making the squad. Kobbie Mainoo got a 7 out of 10. And Jared Bowen got a 6 out of 10, incidentally lower than Noni Madueke while we're talking about him. It was a 7. I want to see if they've changed at all. So,
I think Bowen has definitely gone up to level with Madueke. I think it's neck and neck with those two.
Interesting. Yeah.
Really, really do. So it's very tight with those two. And Kobbie Mainoo, I think. Well, Kobbie Mainoo, in my view, probably hasn't changed, but has moved ahead of others. So he's moved up.
Yeah.
So basically, I think then they're I think that you're probably talking about Declan Rice, Elliot Anderson, Jordan Henderson, and I think Kobbie Mainoo's next. So I think it's. I think we should think about what Tuchel said recently about good tourists, good travellers, and Henderson, for me, gets in because he's such a good player, but also a good tourist.
And Maguire and Shaw?
Maguire and Shaw, I think Maguire definitely moved up. I think basically 6, and Shaw probably the same.
Interesting, yeah. I mean, if this revival, I call it a revival, this promising form under Carrick continues, who knows what, all those guys could well be cementing their place in proper contention. Just looking at the landscape as a whole, we obviously had Premier League fixtures in midweek last week, FA Cup fixtures at the weekend. Just in terms of your overall player ratings, who would you say stood out as having a really top week in terms of putting themselves in contention for the squad, and who had a bit of a stinker?
Yeah, I think that Mark Gay definitely sort of kind of, funnily enough, because he didn't even start. On Saturday, but because then he comes on and basically makes such a difference and positive impact for City, I think if Man City win the title this season, and I still think they're very much in there, and I really do, I think they're a huge threat, then I think that Mark Gay would be my player of the year. I genuinely do. Because I just think that the way he conducted himself in the first half of the season, then I think it kind of speaks volumes about his characteristics and personality at Palace. Respectful, even though he could have left on deadline day.
Right, yeah.
But then, much more so, he's completely transformed Man City. So Man City, I think, looked weak and had sort of issues. I think if City go on to win the league, then personally, in my view, then I think Mark Gay will have made all the difference. And I think Mark Gay will just be remembered as the game changer for City. Yes, you can make the case for Antoine Semenyo, but frankly, in my view, an even bigger transformation is in City's defence, because they do feel as if they're getting momentum and then growing and basically, really snapping at Arsenal's heels now. And basically, Mark Gay, I think, is just outstanding. What a calm presence, what a classy defender. And I think he's been a massive riser. I think Phil Foden, it's difficult sometimes to judge against lower opposition, but I think Foden earned some good headlines, and basically for the way that he performed and really shone at times for City, because it's been very up and down for him this season. I think we're all of the opinion that Phil Foden, if he's on his game, then he's in, isn't he? He's got to be. And then the other one I thought was Lewis Hall. Lewis Hall was sort of kind of eye-catching, very tenacious at left-back. And then Curtis Jones. Curtis Jones was the one that I really, I like Curtis Jones, but he's into a crowded market there.
Yeah, there's a lot of work to do in that.
So that's the only problem. So Curtis Jones, hasn't been an absolute, nailed-on starter. But I like it when he comes on because he makes a difference.
Where's his best position for you? He's obviously played at a little bit all over the place for Liverpool. Where do you think he fits in England's setup?
Oh, well, I think Curtis Jones is a bit more of in a way, the Kobbie Mainoo thing. So basically, I think it's either or, really, because the way that he progresses the ball and brings the ball forward, I love the way that he can bring the ball from deep and come forward. And I think he's really so good at attacking. I mean, they have used him even at fullback on occasion, haven't they?
Right,
so he's so adaptable. I really like him as a personality too. I think he's got lots to offer. He just strikes me as that kind of bright, engaging, enthusiastic, passionate player. I really like that sort of personality in a player. And he's catching my eye. I think we've got big issues at fullback as well. And I think, just going back to Hall, I think basically Hall I think if he can kind of stay fit and keep this run going, then I think he's a big option too.
The last time we were on, you were talking about Nico O'Reilly being the kind of first choice pick at left back. Is Hall chasing him now? Is he on his heels? Is he even ahead of him, perhaps? Yeah,
I think it's interesting with Nico O'Reilly because basically I think he's done ever so well. And there's definitely no doubt in my mind that he's still in pole position. But if he's not playing every week at left back, and so basically in the Premier League a lot, he's been used into midfield, and because to accommodate Ednori. So, but I think with O'Reilly, I still think he's ahead. But I think it's difficult sometimes for a manager to kind of pick a player and then start with him. If someone's doing better in that natural position, which arguably, Hall is doing right now, simply because he's getting minutes in that position. So I think it's an interesting one. But Nico O'Reilly definitely, I think, is still just ahead. But I wouldn't mind betting that he's probably thinking, I'm definitely stitched on at left back, but I'm not so sure about midfield. So he's probably thinking, getting some game time. But I tell you what, you must be pretty good if you're playing in midfield under Guardiola.
Well, quite, yeah. Just on what you said there, players playing in certain positions, sort of forcing the decision for Thomas Tuchel and others. We saw at the weekend Bukayo Saka playing in a number 10 role, underlapping with Noni Madueke on the outside. Who knows whether that was just a one-time thing, and I'm sure Mikel Arteta is going to put him straight back on the right flank. Let's just say hypothetically that becomes a bit of a regular thing for Arsenal. Would that impact Thomas Tuchel having Saka as his automatic starter on the right side? I mean, obviously there's so much competition for places at number 10. Saka has got the ability to do that position, absolutely. But could that potentially, if that sort of continues, I mean, that would be great news for Noni Madueke's chances of getting in the team. But is that something that Saka might have to kind of be semi-aware of? Does he want to really sort of nail down the right-hand flat rank rather than being at number 10?
Yeah, I think he's much better on the right, I've got to be honest. But I think he's... I'm always very sort of kind of almost precious about this, but basically because I think the number 10 is such a... it's almost a mythical position and basically a magical shirt number that brings an extra pressure of it. And it really winds me up when you see kind of average players sort of kind of almost sort of, played in the 10, and basically suddenly a midfield kind of scrapper or warrior is put in,
Conor Gallagher, for example.
Well, Conor Gallagher was sort of kind of characterised in that. And I'm thinking Conor Gallagher's not a number 10.
No.
Conor Gallagher is, I think, a really good midfield warrior, and basically he's just not that player, is he? And basically, Tom Cleverley was another one, I think. Oh, yeah, do you remember that experience, that experiment? I'm sorry, but a number 10 has to have something magical and a bit of sparkle and an eye, and basically, surveying almost that kind of X-ray vision and kind of, sixth sense that basically knows where that plays. Saka's got that. And I think Saka, for me, is a brilliant player. Absolutely fantastic. And I think he's got so much talent. And he's got that X factor that in time, I think that basically he could do it.
What about players who had a bit of a wobbly week? Was there anyone that stood out who sort of, for you, is kind of falling down the rankings a little bit?
Well, I'll tell you what, I don't think anyone had a crazy nightmare week, but one that really came across my radar, and particularly what he said afterwards, was James Trafford. Now, James Trafford, he had a good game against Salford, and I think that basically he will hope then he will get arguably the Carabao Cup final to play in.
Yeah, he's hoping. Yeah,
and then also the as they progress the FA Cup rounds to play in, and he is without a shadow of a doubt a decent goalkeeper, very good with his feet. Now he joined Man City in the summer, but what he said was really interesting. And in fairness, regular Manchester correspondents have also written this and basically said that perhaps his future was, a little bit open for discussion, because he was getting a little bit frustrated, and he went there and basically thinking he would be Man City's number one, and then all of a sudden they signed Donnarumma. And then basically, in fairness, someone like Simon Bajowski and sort of the MEN, he was sort of kind of writing this and basically sort of saying things. And it's been a discussion point, for Guardiola as well. But I think that he really laid it on the line, didn't he, afterwards with his post-match comments. Trafford basically saying, I arrived, expecting to play, and basically didn't see this one coming. And basically, it was obvious that he was, in a very, very polite and diplomatic way, voicing a little bit of frustration and disappointment that he wasn't number one, because he went to City to be number one. And then basically, there's no doubt about it in my mind that the FA definitely saw Trafford as having the potential to be England's future number one. Would you say that now? Definitely not, because he's just not been playing enough. And I think then that the problem was that at the start of the season, I'm not sure whether Trafford did enough in those early games to convince everyone that he could be big enough, strong enough and good enough to be immediately City's number one. I'm not saying he can't be in the future, but if you've then got a chance to sign Donnarumma for, say, £25 million, albeit on a massive contract, I think you're going to do that. And that's, unfortunately for James Trafford, probably means that you are not thinking any longer about him potentially challenging Pickford. You're actually thinking about, is he going to get enough game time to be in the squad, let alone kind of, be anywhere near kind of the team. So I think that's a tough one, for Trafford to swallow, but he really laid it bare on that one.
We'll just move on to Thomas Tuchel. Big week for him. Shiny new contract. Signed on as England manager until 2028. 2 more years of Tukes. We can all celebrate, I hope, the prospect of that. Came somewhat out of the blue, this news. I mean, obviously we had Man United sniffing around. We know that there was interest in the past for him. We know Sir Jim Ratcliffe is a fan. So in many ways, perhaps it didn't come as a complete surprise. But again, somewhat out of the blue. You were in Brussels on Thursday for the Nations League draw. Tuchel was there as well. Perhaps no surprise.
Well, I'll tell you what, that cuts to the quick of it, really, because I think that basically, I think what it's been is a discussion. So basically, last week I was almost questioning, is he actually going to go? And then basically, the FA was sort of saying at the start of the week, yes, he's definitely going.
Right.
Which was a contrast to the previous week when they said, yeah, it should be going.
Right.
And so basically you felt as if, something was afoot.
Interesting.
And so basically it was a slight shift. And he did, in fairness, say in November how much he was enjoying it. And basically was asked specifically, would you like to stay on? And he said, well, definitely it's a topic of conversation, and basically made all the right noises. And basically we're thinking then, okay, he could stay till 2028.
Right, okay.
Talked about the kind of how much fun it was, how, the home Euros could be really exciting for him. So I think all those things coming together, made a lot of sense for him, sort of kind of to be part of. But I think the timing of it was what interested me. And I think that basically there's sort of, because he's then going to draw for a competition which started after his current contract ended. So it just made sense for them to do it. I think the other reason for them to make sense of it was the fact that, I think every question at the World Cup would have been, yeah, but Thomas, what about your future? And they want to move away from that. The anti against it, I would say, is that in Capello's time,
of course, yeah.
Capello played the FA like a fiddle, basically. I mean, it was ridiculous. It was laughable. Basically, how many people could be so naive that all of a sudden there was interest from Serie A clubs, as kind of Capello was suddenly angling for a new contract beyond the 2010 World Cup, and basically got it, and then had an absolute stinker at the World Cup, and then basically stuck with him to Euro 2012. He didn't even see that out, left in a row, and basically it all went south, and basically probably put England back quite some time, really. So that is the worry and the risk. And I think it's a bit of a gamble with Tuchel, because I think Tuchel's qualifying campaign has been outstanding, but Tuchel has a history of falling out with the hierarchy.
He does, yeah.
Right throughout his clubs. So I think that is the worry. So basically, I've become a big fan of his, and I think I like what he's done. He gives England a big chance at the World Cup. So please don't get me wrong, I'm not being too negative about him.
Yeah.
He actually came over to us. He saw kind of familiar faces, sort of waiting to speak to him, and basically said, "Oh, you've got 2 more years of me." So I said, "Well, you've got 2 more years, of us, And so he chuckled, and we got on quite well. And he's an engaging character. He's very passionate, and he's an outstanding coach who will engage players. But he's made some mistakes along the way. I hated what he said about Bellingham, and I still think that, that's wrong. I still can't believe he said that, about the repulsive line.
Or what his mum said.
Yeah. But I just think it's not. I mean, he's apologised for that. I'm sure he's learned some lessons, but he's quite abrasive, at times. He's quite ruthless, and that's a good thing. But I think there's I think far more positives than negatives, and the qualifying campaign is outstanding. I just hope that he is the opposite of what's gone before, which is brilliant in qualifying, not so good in tournaments pre-Gareth Southgate, and Gareth Southgate then couldn't quite get it over the line, and I really hope that Tuchel can. But I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, given the Capello comparison, I mean, there were a lot of similarities with the two of them. Both arrived, between Capello and Tuchel, both arrived with big, managerial CVs at club level, lots of big trophies won, no international experience. Their first qualifying campaign was a breeze. Everything looked really positive, and then obviously Capello's first tournament goes awry. Were you surprised, given that history? It was obviously something that the FA came to regret. Are you surprised that they are taking this, what you've described as a big risk? Are you surprised that they've taken it?
I think it's a different regime. So I think then that the FA mentality now, you can see how close Tuchel is to the CEO, Mark Bullingham, who's a really excellent CEO. I think basically he's been very, very good commercially, has a real deep-seated appreciation of football. Absolutely, don't mistake him for a kind of a suit. He's really, really passionate about football. He's a good guy. he did talk about, when we were talking to him, about basically having, everyone has kind of clauses and gets out performance-related things in his contract, and he specifically said that. So let's be clear. I think that probably takes into account bonuses for what you can achieve, but also if you don't hit the levels as well.
So you think there will be a break clause in there somewhere?
I think so. And I think that basically, if you don't learn lessons from things like Capello, then you're even more naive than the people that kind of gave the Capello thing. I think the other thing is with Capello is that slightly older, I think then that also Capello came in with this incredible reputation and CV, and immediately breezes in as kind of really, strict disciplinarian. I think the England players needed that at that time, but I never, ever, ever felt that he was fully committed to the job. I mean, I just thought it was unbelievably disrespectful not to learn the language better. And listen, I'm someone who really finds it annoying that basically sort of England players don't live and work and embrace the sort of kind of foreign cultures. I mean, Jude Bellingham has, and puts others to shame, really. I think it's brilliant for life experience. But part of that is learning the culture and stuff. Jude Bellingham's immediately gone and learned the language.
Yeah.
Trent Alexander-Arnold too. And I think it's just unbelievable that you wouldn't make that more of a part of it.
And particularly as the man at the top, right?
Yeah,
you expect that just comes with the job.
It's unbelievable looking back. I just thought it was crazy. Can you imagine going and working, living abroad and not, putting more effort into the language and the culture? I just thought, what a wasted opportunity. Not just for yourself, but then also in the message that you put. Well, Tuchel's, English was perfect anyway. So I think they're different personalities and different hunger and different points of their career. And I think Tuchel's loving this adventure. Whereas I felt as if with Capello, who, by the way, as I was writing last week, Capello even sort of kind of 15 years ago was earning more on the basic FA contract than is being handed out now.
Yes, it's crazy.
I mean, it's absolutely bonkers. So I think I think that's changed, and they're basically that mindset. So so you have to kind of keep that in mind. But Capello felt to me like a bit of a mercenary, frankly, and basically, we enjoyed what he said when he was absolutely brutal in the job and then post the job. But frankly, was he ever actually engaged and invested in it? I'm not so sure.
Yeah, and I think it's worth noting with Tuchel as well. He seems to have taken to life in England like a duck to water.
Yeah.
He really enjoyed his time at Chelsea, wanted to stay for a long time, and obviously seems to be really enjoying. You get that sense that he loves being there. He loves the job. I mean, I know managers will always say that when they sign a new contract, but there is that sense of
you do. Honestly, you do. That is genuine. So I know this kind of replayed in 6 months when he's gone. He's gone. But honestly, he lives in London, based himself in London, goes to St George's Park a lot. Yeah. And what I find is really interesting is that basically St George's Park, there's this big dining room where basically a lot of the coaches and sort of kind of staff go to eat, and basically at lunchtime. I was there, say, 2 or 3 weeks ago to go and see Serena Wiegmann for something, and basically afterwards, a few of us just broke off and had a quick bite and a drink, sort of kind of a coffee in the dining room before we shut off, and basically there is everyone. Serena came in, and then there's Lee Carsley. And then basically, Tuchel wasn't there that day, but it's a common thing to see him in there. And basically, he engages and he sort of kind of works and he gets around the grounds. He's in boardrooms. He's in amongst Premier League executives. He's a very, very familiar face. He's embraced it. I think it's incredibly unfair to characterise it any other way. And basically, he absolutely, he's sort of kind of committed to living in England, being part of London, loves London. He jokes about kind of the English media and how he clearly finds us quite funny and mischievous and a bit different to what he might be used to in Germany, for example. Yeah. And all those sort of things that, he's a bit of a giggle, actually, if you get him in quiet moments. He's incredibly brutal and open. And I like that in him. He's good, and sometimes he'll let his guard down a bit, but then basically, and say maybe the wrong thing. But honestly, he's bought into it. Absolutely bought into the lifestyle.
Yeah, he doesn't beat around the bush, does he? Some interesting quotes he gave on Jude Bellingham, who of course is out injured at the moment, looking unlikely to be fit for the March friendlies that England have got coming up. He said of Bellingham that he's in a race against time to be fit for not just the March friendlies, but for the to prove his fitness ahead of the World Cup in general. Perhaps I was reading that wrong.
Yeah, you're reading that wrong. Yeah.
Well, even so, let's. Tuchel has been hot on players who are familiar with his system, have kind of been in the camp. He obviously left Bellingham. He's left players out in the past who have not been available and with him regularly. Do those comments suggest that if push came to shove, he would be prepared to leave Jude Bellingham at home? Let's say it was a fitness issue, or let's just say a lack of familiarity issue. Do those comments suggest that Tuchel will be prepared to leave him at home?
No, I don't think they do. I think that basically, I was the one that asked sort of about Jude actually, because if you're familiar and regular on this show, you'll know how much I love sort of kind of Jude Bellingham. I think he's England's star man, an absolute must for the starting lineup, and basically gets in every day of the week for me. I think that basically what he was saying was that it's definitely a race against time for March. He actually said, I'm optimistic. And he said Bellingham is desperate to come, and he's made it definite clear. Then he went on to say, Real Madrid not so much, basically, because he was basically saying the club are not quite so optimistic.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't surprise me if Bellingham just missed out on the March friendlies, because Madrid are quite, strong and clever with their players about making sure that they don't join up if they're not fit. They're quite strong on that. They kind of take the Fergie view, basically. If you're not fit for your club yet, you don't join up. And so basically they're quite strong on that. But I did wonder whether kind of, even if he's not fit, does he pop in? To sort of kind of, some players do that. It's obviously a little bit different because he's overseas, so you have to kind of take those things into account. But in my view, there's no chance that basically he was talking about more about the World Cup. He was just talking about March, and I think he was very, very positive on that. I basically think at the moment we've kind of got Rodgers, Bellingham, and then one other for the 10 role. And I think that he'll end up picking 3. But Bellingham, let's be clear here, has played deeper, can play slightly different. Yeah. Rodgers has played a lot onto the left and been very effective for Villa. So I think there's, conundrums there. But I left that conversation thinking, me being the positive person that I am, Harry, I immediately wrote he said he's optimistic for Bellingham to be fit for March.
Yeah.
And then basically, but I did obviously say then that he admits he's a race against time and Real Madrid not quite so convinced. So that was my take on it. I think that ultimately he might well miss on March and not be quite fit. It was worrying, wasn't it, when you saw Bellingham go down like that? And sort of kind of because a player knows, I think. And I think the extent of the injury immediately. And I think that he was worried. And sure, you're going to be worried. If suddenly April becomes May, you cannot afford to take a half-fit player, I think, to a tournament. Well, so many mistakes in the past.
Exactly, yeah.
But I'm pretty confident that he thinks he'll be fit the latest April to be ready for the World Cup. There's no doubt in his mind that he's fit for the World Cup. No doubt at all.
Do you think Bellingham's eagerness to be part of the squad in March is just down to the fact that he just wants to play all the time like most footballers do? Or is there a fear in the back of his mind that if Cole Palmer and Phil Foden and Morgan Rogers are playing out their skin, you've already said there's no chance that he doesn't go, but let's just say, is there a chance that he sort of feels my position might be under threat, I might be moved back deeper, I might be moved somewhere, is there a fear in the back of his mind, do you think?
I think in World Cup year, and particularly so close to the tournament, any player is going to be worried because and fearful. And I think if they really, really want to play and it's their dream, then I think, as it is, I think for so many England footballers, then I think you're going to be worried. And I think that's the part of it. In the past, we have had players, drop in, haven't we? Sort of kind of think. Right, I'm thinking John Stones joined up, didn't he? Sort of kind of, for that sort of friendlies training base when they went to the Barcelona Grand Prix. And basically, just to sort of kind of say hello, keep in touch with everyone, even though he wasn't playing, which was a nice touch. But I also think it says to me, kind of players want to be, with less than a year to go in the World Cup year, you're thinking, I want to be part of that. For me personally, there's no doubt in my mind that Bellingham goes. But I think that, it would be such an error, and I just don't think that that's in Tuchel's thinking right now. I think he's probably tried to send a message saying that everyone wants to be, everyone needs to be part of a group and a squad. And I think that message has definitely, it kind of resonated, has become crystal clear. But in my view, I just don't think it's an issue.
You mentioned earlier that it's kind of Rodgers and Bellingham are leading the way in terms of the number 10 selection. Is Rodgers in there simply because Palmer and Foden haven't been at it, or is that an unfair characterisation? Can he compete and even beat those players regardless of how well they're playing?
I think he's ahead of those two players right now. I think it is a bit unfair to sort of say he's just keeping the seat warm, if you like, because I just feel that he's really grown at Aston Villa. Aston Villa has been so good for him and vice versa. And I think he's just looks fantastic. I think the other aspect of him that he sort of brings over, perhaps the other two is physicality. So I think he's, not only is he an incredibly intelligent player who sort of kind of spots passes and can read danger, provide things, but he's powerful and he's strong. And basically he's sort of kind of the opposite of the other two, slightly lesser built, sort of kind of, very skillful technical players, but he brings everything to the party, Rodgers. So I think his progression, I think, as a player is really moving upwards.
If every England striker is at their very best heading into the World Cup, like their most perfect, most informed, injury-free version of themselves, who, in your view, should go, or absolutely should go to the World Cup alongside Harry Kane? We'll take Harry Kane out of the equation because we all know Harry Kane is the top of that list. But so, when you sort of consider not just what those players, what each striker brings to the table, but how they might complement the squad, how they might complement playing with Harry Kane or coming on for Harry Kane, who, if they're all at their best, should go?
I'm going to make a very strong case here for Dominic Calvert-Lewin. I think Dominic Calvert-Lewin is a really, really interesting one because he's just come up on the rails. Yeah. I think Ollie Watkins is different as a striker for Kane. So I think Watkins provides the different option. So if you want that kind of quick fire inside forward, then I think Watkins is your man. I think if you want the opposite, if you want the very clear backup or kind of competition for Kane, then I think it's Calvert-Lewin.
And lastly, Raheem Sterling has just joined Feyenoord, having mutually agreed to cancel his Chelsea contract. Does he have an outside chance of making the squad? I mean, this is a player who's obviously got a wealth of England experience. He's got history with Thomas Tuchel, made a great effort to bring him to Chelsea from City. Didn't work with him for that long in the end, but, really is a fan of his. Are we sleeping on Raheem Sterling a little bit? Does he have an outside chance of making the squad?
No, I don't think he does. I still think he probably has an ambition and a hunger to get there, because that's the personality that he is. And we should never, ever underestimate what he's done in his career. I think he's been absolutely fantastic. 4 titles with Man City, England's best player at the sort of kind of the Euros in 2021. A real shining light. He's fantastic, what he's done for English football. One of the best sort of English players of his generation, really. I think sometimes he doesn't get the respect that he deserves. But personally, I just think he's kind of, looking for a new challenge. I hope that works for him, but I think it's beyond that with England now. I'll be ever so surprised if he's sort of kind of back and involved, really. I think others are kind of ahead, and there's probably too many obstacles and players in his way now.
Too little, too late, sounds like. Well, brilliant. Thank you very much, John. I appreciate your time. That just about does it for our England player ratings episode. Feel free to head over to Mirror Football on the website and on the app to have your say about who should stay and who should go to the World Cup as part of Thomas Tuchel's England squad this summer. And don't forget to subscribe. Make football great again. We're on YouTube, we're on Apple, we're on Spotify, and we're also on the verge of launching our gigantic, fantabulous 2026 World Cup preview series. It's going to be amazing. You don't want to miss it. We've got untold stories from past World Cups. We're sitting down with a representative from every single nation heading to the tournament. It stars me, it stars John, it stars a hell of a lot of great people that you're going to know and love. So don't want to miss it. Until next time, keep making football great again.